Kevin Martinez stared at the notification on his screen for the 5th time that morning. Unable to believe what he was reading, the message came from the diplomatic office of the Veteran Dominion, and it requested a private meeting with him specifically. The Veteran were a species known for their rigid protocols and hierarchical structure, and they rarely requested anything outside of official diplomatic channels. The station around him hummed with its usual activity. Meridian was a neutral space station where dozens of species conducted trade, research, and negotiations in relative peace. Kevin had worked here for the past 3 years as a human diplomat, and he had learned to navigate the complex relationships between different alien civilizations, but this request was unusual. The Veteran never asked for individual meetings unless something significant was at stake. Kevin walked through the corridors of the station, his mind turning over the possibilities. What could the Veteran possibly want with him? He had never attended any official meetings with their government. He had no significant role in human-Veteran relations, and his diplomatic portfolio focused mainly on the peaceful species in the Outer Rim. The mystery gnawed at him as he approached the designated meeting chamber. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Kevin stepped into a large circular room. The Veteran had requested a formal meeting space, which meant they were treating this as an official matter. The walls were bare and clinical, just as he would have expected from a species that valued order and precision. Then she entered, and Kevin felt his breath catch in his throat. The Veteran Queen was remarkable. She was taller than Kevin remembered, her chitinous exoskeleton a deep emerald green that seemed to shift in the light. Her compound eyes were focused entirely on him, and her mandibles moved in what might have been an expression of recognition. Her name was Selvara, and she had been a royal scout when Kevin had last seen her 15 years ago. Kevin stood frozen, unable to process the sight before him. How was this possible? The young injured scout who had crash-landed on New Haven all those years ago was now the queen of her entire species. The last time he had seen her, she was wearing tattered combat armor and could barely move from her injuries. Now she was draped in ceremonial robes of shimmering silver and gold, symbols of royal authority stitched into every seam. Selvara moved forward with the grace of someone accustomed to power, and Kevin found himself bowing instinctively. The gesture felt natural. Despite the years that had passed since their last meeting, Kevin Martinez, Selvara said, her voice modulated through translation device, but carrying undeniable warmth. You look much the same as I remember. Kevin struggled to find words. Your Majesty, I am honored by this meeting, but I must admit I am confused. How do you know my name? Surely you have met countless humans in your time as queen. Selvara's compound eyes fixed on his face, and she was silent for a moment. I remember everything. Kevin, a scout, is trained to observe details, and I had 3 months to observe you very carefully when you hid me in your settlement. It was the first time in my life that someone from another species showed me genuine kindness. The memories came flooding back. 15 years was a long time, but suddenly Kevin could recall every detail of those 3 months when he was a young settlement coordinator on New Haven. The Veteran exploration ship had crashed in the northern mountains during a terrible storm, and most of the crew had perished. He had found Selvara wandering in the forest, injured and disoriented. Far from her rescue team, instead of reporting her discovery to the military command on the colony, Kevin had made a decision that could have cost him his career. He had brought her to an abandoned research station deep in the wilderness and had spent weeks nursing her back to health. He would bring her food and water, sit with her while she recovered, and share stories about Earth and humanity. Those conversations had been unlike anything Kevin had ever experienced. Selvara asked questions that made him think differently about his own species. She wanted to understand not just what humans were, but why they were the way they were. She was fascinated by human music, And Kevin had played old recordings for her on a damaged music player. He remembered how she had sat perfectly still, listening to Beethoven's symphonies, her entire body moving in rhythm with the sound. But all that had ended when her rescue team finally found her. The veteran had detected her distress beacon, and within days, a full rescue expedition had located their lost Royal Scout. Kevin had known it was inevitable. But when the moment came, Silvara had simply turned to him and said, "I must return to my people." She had never said goodbye. She had simply disappeared into the transport ship. And Kevin had never expected to see her again. "I thought you had forgotten," Kevin said quietly. "I thought that after you returned to your people, everything here would just become a memory, and then eventually, it would fade away. I could never forget," Silvara replied. And something in her tone suggested that this was not simply a statement but a fact of her biology or her nature as a royal of the veteran. "When I returned to my people, I carried those memories with me. I carried the sound of your music. I carried the feeling of being understood by someone so different from myself. I carried the knowledge that kindness between species was possible." Kevin felt emotion rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Years of diplomatic training had taught him to maintain composure in surprising situations. Still, his voice wavered slightly. "Why have you come here now? After so many years?" Silvara moved to a window that overlooked the vast darkness of space. Her reflection in the glass was ethereal. "Because my people face a crisis, and I remembered that you once told me that understanding was more powerful than strength. I've become queen of the veteran, Kevin, and I need your help. I need the help of someone I can trust completely. And you are the only one I have ever truly trusted." Outside the window, the stars twinkled in the infinite darkness, and Kevin realized that everything in his life was about to change. The girl he had hidden in the wilderness had become powerful, and she had remembered him. She had come across the vast emptiness of space to find him, and now she was asking for something that could change the fate of worlds. The weight of that moment settled upon his shoulders like gravity itself, pulling him toward a destiny he had never expected to face. The private chamber remained silent for a long moment as Kevin processed what was happening. Silvara stood motionless, her chitinous form silhouetted against the star field behind her. And Kevin found himself seeing both the young scout he had known and the powerful queen she had become. At last, Silvara turned from the window and gestured for Kevin to sit with her. "I have spent years searching for you," Silvara began, her voice steady and measured. "When I returned to my people, I discovered that finding someone on a human world was nearly impossible. Human record systems are scattered across so many locations, and your civilization has not yet integrated its information the way more advanced species have. My people wanted me to move forward, to forget what had happened, to focus on my duties as a Royal Scout, but I could not let you go so easily." Kevin sat in one of the smooth chairs and found himself genuinely curious. "But you are queen now. Surely you have access to any information you need. Surely your entire civilization is at your service." "That is true," Silvara said, and she moved closer to Kevin, her movements graceful despite her size. "But I could not use official channels to find you. To do so would have required explaining why I was searching, and there are those in my government who would have viewed my interest in a human with suspicion or even concern. The veteran are not known for the kind of personal attachments that you humans value, but my people underestimated what happened between us during those 3 months on New Haven." Silvara settled herself onto a seat designed for her species, one that could support her weight. "I remember the night when the first storm came, and you were afraid that the rescue team would search the area. You played music for me, and we sat together in the darkness while the wind howled outside that research station. You told me that humans are often afraid, but they act anyway, that they find courage not in the absence of fear, but in the decision to do the right thing despite it. Kevin smiled despite himself, remembering that night. The power had gone out during the storm, and he had used a hand-cranked flashlight to provide light. He had talked to Selvara for hours about his family back on Earth, about his dreams for exploration, about what it meant to be human in a universe full of so many other species. Selvara had listened with intense focus, asking questions that revealed a mind as sharp as any human philosopher. "I remember you used to ask me what humans would do in impossible situations," Kevin said softly. "You would describe conflict scenarios and ask me how I would react. You seemed fascinated that humans would sometimes choose to sacrifice themselves for others." "Yes," Selvara confirmed, "because the Veteran are logical beings. Kevin, we understand efficiency and survival. We understand hierarchy and duty. But we do not fully understand choice. Not the kind of choice that defies logic. I watched you hide me from your own people, risking your career and your freedom because you believed it was the right thing to do. That taught me something that no amount of strategic planning could have shown me." Kevin leaned forward. "You said your people face a crisis. What has happened?" Selvara's compound eyes seemed to grow darker. "A neighboring species called the Krell have begun expanding their territory. Aggressively, they attack our colonies without warning. They destroy infrastructure and take resources. My War Council demands that we respond with overwhelming force. They want to erase the Krell threat completely with our superior military technology. But you disagree," Kevin said, understanding dawning on him. "Yes," Selvara confirmed. "I remember your words about cycles of violence. You said that if you simply destroy an enemy, you create survivors who become even more hostile. And the cycle continues forever. I have studied human history, Kevin, and I see this pattern repeated again and again. Yet you still learn. You still grow. You still find better ways. I wanted that from my people too." Kevin felt the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Selvara stood and walked to a terminal embedded in the wall. She activated it and showed Kevin images of Krell territory, Veteran colonies, and defensive positions. The maps were complex and detailed, showing years of conflict and territorial disputes. "I need the human government to provide support. Kevin, I need intelligence about Krell tactics and military capabilities. I need the Human Council to see that this conflict can be resolved without destroying an entire species. But more than that, I need you to help me convince my own government that there is another way. This is impossible." Kevin protested, though even as he said it, he knew he would help her. "If I go to the Human Council with a request from a Veteran queen, they will demand to know why I'm involved. How can I explain my connection to you without revealing everything?" "You tell them the truth," Selvara said simply. "You tell them that I was once stranded on human territory, that I received kindness from you, and that now I am asking for humanity to show that same kindness to a broader situation. Tell them that a leader of the Veteran Dominion is willing to risk her own position within her government, because she believes that humans have wisdom that my species needs. You might be surprised how receptive they will be." Kevin stood and walked beside Selvara at the terminal. He studied the maps of the conflict zone, seeing the patterns of aggression, but also the patterns of desperation. The Krell attacks seemed to be concentrated in areas near their home territory, and their movements suggested not conquest but expansion, as if they needed something more than just territory. "I need to think about this," Kevin said finally. "This is a large responsibility. I need to understand the full scope of what you are asking." "I know," Selvara said. "I do not expect an answer tonight, but I wanted you to understand that I remember you, Kevin. I remember the hope you showed me, and I have been waiting years for a moment when I could repay that kindness by using what I have learned to help my people become better. I am asking you to help me do that." Kevin looked at the Veteran Queen before him and saw in her the same curious scout he had known, but also someone transformed by power and responsibility into something greater than either of them had been back on New Haven. The connection between them transcended species and time, a thread of genuine human understanding that had somehow survived across the vastness of space and years. "I will help you," Kevin said. And as he spoke, he felt the die cast, his future pathway suddenly clear before him outside the window. The stars twinkled in the infinite darkness, and Kevin realized that everything in his life was about to change. The girl he had hidden in the wilderness had become powerful, and she had remembered him. She had come across the vast emptiness of space to find him. And now she was asking for something that could change the fate of worlds. The weight of that moment settled upon his shoulders like gravity itself, pulling him toward a destiny he had never expected to face. Kevin spent 3 sleepless nights in his quarters after his meeting with Silvara. He had told her that he would help, but now he faced the difficult task of actually making good on that promise. The responsibility weighed on him like gravity, itself pulling him down toward a decision that could have consequences far beyond what he could calculate on the 4th day. He requested an urgent meeting with Captain Amanda Foster, the head of the human diplomatic mission on Meridian. Amanda was in her 60s, a veteran of space exploration who had seen humanity grow from a species just beginning to leave its home world into a civilization capable of negotiating with alien powers across the galaxy. She had mentored Kevin since his arrival at the station, and he trusted her judgment completely. Amanda listened carefully as Kevin explained the situation, though he could see the surprise on her face deepen as he spoke about his history with Silvara and the current crisis with the Krell. When he finished, Amanda sat back in her chair and exhaled slowly. "Kevin, do you understand what you are asking? Do you understand the political implications if we get involved in a conflict between 2 major galactic powers?" "Yes, Captain, I do," Kevin replied. "But Silvara is asking not for military intervention, but for information and mediation. She wants to prevent a war, not start one." Amanda stood and walked to her office window, which looked out toward the space docks where human ships were docked. "Let me pull the classified files on both the Veteran and the Krell. We need to understand what we are really dealing with here before we can make any decisions." They spent the rest of that day reviewing documents and intelligence reports. The Veteran were indeed a powerful species with advanced technology and a military structure that had kept them dominant in their sector for centuries. The Krell, by contrast, were a younger species with less advanced technology, but incredible adaptability and resourcefulness. Their homeworld was in a different region of space, and their attempts to expand had been increasingly aggressive over the past 5 years. "Look at this pattern," Amanda said, pointing to a series of territorial claims and resource depletion reports. "The Krell are not attacking randomly. They are targeting areas rich in a specific mineral, something the Veteran intelligence reports as xinthium. It is a rare element used in advanced computing systems." Kevin studied the reports and felt understanding begin to crystallize. So the Krell are not attacking out of pure malice. They need resources. They probably have a specific problem they are trying to solve. "Exactly," Amanda confirmed. "And if the Veteran respond with the overwhelming force their war council is demanding, they might eliminate the Krell threat. But they will create millions of Krell refugees and survivors who will harbor hatred toward the Veteran for generations. This could spark a cycle of revenge that might destabilize the entire region." Kevin felt emboldened by Amanda's analysis. "Captain, I have an idea, but it is unconventional." "Try me," Amanda said, leaning back in her chair. "What if humans offered to serve as mediators?" Kevin asked. "We are new to the galactic community. We have no history of conflict with either the Veteran or the Krell. We are not aligned with any major power block. Neither side would feel threatened by human involvement. Amanda's expression grew thoughtful. You are talking about humanity stepping in as neutral arbiters in a conflict between two major civilizations. That is ambitious. Kevin. But think about it. Kevin pressed forward. The Krell and Vethran have a history of misunderstanding and hostility. What they need is someone who can talk to both sides without judgment. Someone who can help them understand each other's needs instead of viewing each other as threats. The Vethran have superior weapons. Yes, but humans have something they may lack. We have shown the galaxy that we are willing to take risks for peace. We are known for finding creative solutions. Amanda was quiet for a long time. I will need to present this to the Council on Earth. But Kevin, I want you to understand something. This is not going to be easy. Humanity has been trying to prove itself as a serious member of the galactic community. We have not yet fought a major war. We have not yet proven our military capability or our strategic thinking in large-scale conflicts. If we propose mediation and it fails, we could lose credibility with every major power in this region. But if it succeeds, Kevin said, if we can bring peace to a conflict that seemed inevitable, then humanity becomes something more than just another species with good technology. We become known as people who can find peace where others see only war. We become architects of the future instead of just participants in conflicts created by others. Amanda nodded slowly. I believe you are right, but I also need to ask you something important. Are your feelings for this veteran queen influencing your judgment? Are you proposing this solution because it is genuinely the best option, or because she asked you to help her? Kevin opened his mouth to answer quickly, then stopped. He took time to genuinely consider the question. Captain, I would be lying if I said my connection to Silvara does not matter, but I believe that does. Not make me wrong, I believe it actually makes me right because I know her. Because I understand the genuineness of her desire for peace. Because I have seen that she is not some cold alien commander, but someone with real values and real ethics. If my personal connection allows me to see what might otherwise be invisible to someone who only reads reports, then maybe that connection is valuable. Amanda smiled slightly. That is a good answer, Kevin. You show wisdom beyond your years. I will present your proposal to the council. But understand this. In the meantime, you will need to help Silvara understand that the veteran cannot simply refuse to defend themselves if attacked. We must find a solution quickly, before events spiral beyond anyone's control. Over the following weeks, Kevin found himself in a strange new life. He attended secret meetings with Silvara, discussing possible solutions to the Krell problem. They reviewed intelligence together. And Kevin began to see the conflict not as a simple matter of good versus evil, but as a genuine tragedy where both sides had legitimate needs. The Krell needed resources to survive, and the veteran needed to protect their colonies from what appeared to be an external threat. The real breakthrough came when Kevin suggested investigating why the Krell needed Xinthium so desperately. What if the reason lay not in weapon production, but in some other need that could be addressed differently? The answer, when they found it, changed everything. The Human Council met in a secure conference room on Earth, and Kevin was present via quantum-linked video transmission. The council consisted of 5 members representing humanity's government, and they had reviewed every document, every piece of intelligence, and every strategic analysis that Kevin and Amanda had compiled. Their expressions were serious, almost grim, as they listened to Kevin's proposal for human mediation between the veteran and the Krell. You are asking humanity to place itself between 2 major galactic powers. Councilmember Chun said, if this mediation fails, we could find ourselves in a conflict we did not create and cannot easily exit. Yes, Councilwoman Chun, Kevin replied calmly. But I am also suggesting that this is exactly the moment when humanity needs to step forward. We have been welcomed into the galactic community, But we have not yet proven what we can offer beyond technology and trade. What if we proved that we offer something more valuable? What if we proved that we are a species capable of bringing peace where others see only conflict? Amanda spoke next. The intelligence we have gathered suggests that this conflict is not inevitable. The Krell are not inherently aggressive. They are desperate. The root cause of their expansion is a biological problem with their home world. Their population is growing, and their resources are becoming scarce. If we can help them find an alternative solution, the conflict could be prevented entirely. Councilmember Martinez leaned forward. And you believe you can negotiate this? You believe you can convince a species with superior military technology to show mercy to an expanding power that threatens their territory? I do not believe it will be easy, Kevin said carefully. But I believe it is possible because I have met the Veteran Queen. And I know she is willing to take that risk. She has come to us asking for help. Not out of weakness, but out of a genuine desire to find a better path than the one her war council is demanding. The council members exchanged glances. There was a long moment of silence, and then Council Member Foster spoke. I move that we authorize human mediation in this conflict. I move that we support Kevin Martinez as our primary mediator and provide him with the resources and authority he needs to succeed. Those in favor? The vote was unanimous. Humanity had committed itself to the path of peace. Kevin felt a surge of hope as Amanda congratulated him, but that hope would soon be tested as he learned that convincing the Veteran War Council would be far more difficult than convincing his own people on the veteran home world. Selvara faced her own challenges. Her war council was furious when she announced that she would pursue negotiations instead of military action. Her generals, led by Commander Thyron, a military officer from an older generation of veteran conquest, spoke with barely controlled anger in the war chamber. Your Majesty, Thyron said, you would sacrifice our military advantage? You would allow the Krell to continue their expansion while we waste time in negotiations that will lead nowhere. This is weakness masquerading as wisdom. Selvara stood perfectly still, her emerald exoskeleton catching the light of the war chamber. I am consulting with the human species, Commander, with people who have shown the galaxy that there are alternatives to the path of endless conflict. The humans! Another general spat. A species barely beyond their own world. Young and naive and utterly unprepared for the realities of galactic conflict. You would take their advice over the counsel of the most experienced military minds in our empire. Yes, Selvara said simply. I did not say I would abandon our military preparations, I said. I would pursue negotiations in parallel with our defense efforts. But I want to understand the Krell before I commit to destroying them. The War Council chamber erupted in outrage. But Selvara raised her mandibles in a gesture of absolute authority. You forget something, Commander Thyron. I am your queen. My word is final. You will prepare the defensive forces. But you will do so under my command, and when the time comes for negotiations, you will stand beside me and honor my decisions. That night, Selvara met with Kevin via secure communication. They resist me, she said, and Kevin could hear exhaustion in her voice. They do not understand why I would choose this path, because it is harder, Kevin said gently. It is always harder to choose peace than to choose war. War is simple and clear. Negotiations are messy and complicated and require you to face uncomfortable truths about your enemy and yourself. Over the next month, something miraculous happened. Kevin worked tirelessly with both sides, demonstrating the human capacity for finding common ground and creative solutions. Finally, both the veteran and the Krell agreed to negotiations. The meeting would take place on a neutral station positioned between both territories, a research facility that had hosted diplomatic meetings before. The station was a tense place as representatives from all three species arrived. The Krell were different from what Kevin had imagined. They were not the savage warriors the military reports had suggested, but rather a species driven by desperation and fear. They had emerged from their home world only when their population could no longer be sustained. Kevin was officially designated as the primary mediator, and both Silvara and the Krell leadership agreed to his involvement. The first sessions were difficult. Each side presented their grievances and demands, and for a moment, it seemed like the conference might break down before real dialogue could even begin, but Kevin remained patient. He asked questions that helped both sides understand each other's perspectives. He presented scientific data showing that the Krell's homeworld was indeed dying, that their expansion was born from genuine need rather than malice. He explained to the veteran that defending against the Krell required understanding why they were expanding, not simply crushing them. The breakthrough came when Kevin spoke to both delegations together. "Every species fears the same things," he said. "You fear loss of your home world, loss of your people, loss of your children's future. The veteran fear invasion and loss of their territory. The Krell fear extinction and the death of their civilization. When you see only your own fear, you cannot see the shared humanity in your enemy. But when you look for what you have in common, you find that your enemy is not so different from yourself." Kevin paused, letting his words settle. "Humans come from a harsh world. We have survived countless conflicts and wars and natural disasters, and we have learned that the only way forward is to work together to solve problems that threaten all of us. The veteran have superior military technology, but the Krell have the knowledge of their own world and their own people. If you could share that knowledge, if you could work together instead of against each other, you could find solutions that benefit both species." The Krell leader, who was called Corvus, spoke first. "What does the human suggest?" Kevin presented a plan. The veteran helped the Krell relocate to a habitable region in neutral space. The Krell will teach the veteran about their biology and their needs. The two species will establish a shared governance structure, and the human government will provide medical aid and agricultural technology to support the transition. It was Silvara who moved first toward agreement. "This is acceptable to the veteran. We have the capability to help you have my commitment." Corvus considered the proposal. "This would require trust, and trust is dangerous." "Yes," Kevin agreed. "Trust is the most dangerous thing in the universe, but it is also the only thing that makes peace possible." After 3 weeks of intense negotiation, the agreement was signed by both parties. The veteran and the Krell had chosen peace, and humanity had proven itself worthy of a place among the great powers of the galaxy. The news of the agreement spread across the galaxy like light through darkness. The veteran and the Krell had chosen peace, and humanity had brokered the deal. The implications were staggering for such a young species. Kevin found himself celebrated across news networks and diplomatic channels. But all he could think about was that the hardest part had been convincing two peoples to trust each other, not convincing them that peace was possible. The implementation of the agreement began immediately. Veteran engineers and medical specialists began working with Krell experts to develop a relocation plan. The neutral territory was surveyed, and construction began on a new settlement that would serve as home for the relocated Krell population. Human agricultural specialists arrived to help establish food systems that would sustain the Krell population. As they adapted to their new world, what had once seemed impossible was becoming reality. 3 months after the final agreement was signed, Kevin found himself standing on the observation deck of the veteran diplomatic station. He had been invited to witness the departure of the first transport ships, carrying Krell settlers to their new home. The ships were veteran vessels, and they carried not soldiers but builders and healers and teachers. The Krell leadership had decided to entrust Their people to the care of a species that had once been their enemy. This act of faith had become the symbol of the peace they had created behind him. He heard the familiar sound of Selvara's approach. Her mandibles made soft clicking sounds as she walked. A sound that had become almost comforting to him over the past months. She came to stand beside him at the window, and they watched together as the first transport ship detached from the station and began moving toward Veteran space. Your people are calling you a hero, Selvara said. They say you saved millions of lives. Kevin shook his head slowly. It was not me, Selvara. It was you. You were the one who had the courage to stand against your own council. You were the one who remembered that peace was possible, even when everyone around you demanded war. I remembered your words, Selvara said. And Kevin could hear something that might have been emotion in her modulated voice. I remembered 3 months in the wilderness with someone who believed that understanding was more important than strength. When I faced my war council, I thought of what you would have wanted me to do, not the me that I became, but the me that I could have been if my own people had shown me kindness the way you did. Kevin turned to face her fully. They stood there in silence for a long moment, a human and a veteran queen, separated by biology and culture and the vast distances of space, but connected by something that transcended all of those boundaries. I need to tell you something, Selvara said. I was afraid when I first came to find you. I was afraid that you would have forgotten me, or that you would resent me for leaving, or that the Kevin I remembered was just a memory of someone who no longer existed. But seeing you again, seeing you here, watching you bring two peoples together with the same belief in kindness that you once showed to an injured stranger in the wilderness, I realized that some connections cannot be broken by distance or time. Kevin felt his eyes growing wet. I thought about you every day for the first 5 years after you left. I had almost convinced myself that you were a dream, something my mind had created to help me survive the disappointment of never seeing you again. Then you appeared, and everything I thought I had accepted as unchangeable suddenly shifted. Selvara extended her foreleg, and it was a gesture that Kevin understood to mean intimacy and trust among her people. He took it gently. Some beings, no matter how different they are, become part of your core, Selvara said. I have learned this truth by studying your kind, by reviewing human literature and human history. But I came to understand it fully in those 3 months with you. You became part of me, Kevin, in a way that my biology did not prepare me for and my culture could never explain. But it is true. Kevin pulled Selvara's foreleg closer, and they stood there at the window, watching the ships depart. Each one carried settlers and builders and the hope of two species learning to live together in peace. They carried the future, a future that would not have been possible without a young settlement coordinator who had shown kindness to a wounded stranger. What will you do now? Kevin asked. You have brought peace to your region. You have proven that your way is better than the way of endless conflict. Where do you go from here? I return to my world and I begin the work of rebuilding our society based on the principles I have learned, Selvara said. But I wanted to meet you one last time before I went, to look at your face one more time, to confirm that this was all real and not another memory that my mind had created. It is real, Kevin said gently. And this is not goodbye, Selvara. We both know that now. The galaxy is smaller than we thought. There will be trade between our peoples, diplomatic missions, cultural exchanges. I will see you again. Yes, Selvara agreed. But not for some time. My people will need me to lead them through this transition. They will need to understand that the choice we made was not weakness, but strength. I will need to demonstrate that to them every day. Kevin nodded, understanding the weight of her responsibility. And I will return to Earth. I will tell my people about the veteran queen who remembered. A kindness shown to her so many years ago. I will tell them that the impossible is possible. if we believe strongly enough in doing the right thing. Selvara's compound eyes focused on Kevin's face with an intensity that seemed to absorb everything about him. Thank you for being the kind of human you are. When I first came to your world, injured and afraid, I could have been captured or hurt, or used as a prisoner. But instead, I met someone who saw another being in pain and chose to help. Without thought of reward, that choice changed my life. It changed the path of my entire species. You would have done the same for someone else, Kevin said. I remember how you were Selva, a scout trained in survival and strategy, but with a heart that understood compassion even then. I am grateful that I was the one who found you. But you would have found your way to compassion regardless. It was always part of who you are. The first transport ship disappeared into the vast darkness of space, heading toward a new future and a new beginning. Kevin and Selvara stood together and watched as one by one the other ships departed. The station around them seemed to grow quieter with each departure, as if the weight of history was lifting from this place. I must go now, Selvara said finally. My own people are waiting. Kevin released her foreleg and stepped back. Go then, lead your people with the wisdom and compassion that I know you possess. Show them that choosing peace does not require weakness, but rather the greatest strength a leader can possess. Selvara turned toward the exit, then paused and looked back at Kevin one last time. Remember me as I have remembered you, not as the queen or the scout, but as Selvara. Remember the Selvara who was grateful to know someone who believed in the best parts of herself. Always, Kevin promised. And then she was gone, her form disappearing through the corridor toward the platform where her vessel waited. Kevin stood alone at the observation window, watching the veteran royal ship rise and slowly accelerate toward the stars, the ship carrying the queen who had remembered, the woman who had become powerful enough to change her world because once, long ago, someone had shown her kindness. As the ship jumped to hyperspace and vanished from sight, Kevin smiled. This was not goodbye. It was simply see you again, a promise made across the stars between two individuals who had discovered that connection transcends species and distance and time. The most powerful force in the universe was not weapons or technology or military might. It was the simple, remarkable, beautiful choice to remember someone and to trust that connection could bridge any divide. The queen had remembered her young protector, and the human had chosen to help her, and in that choice, they had changed the fate of millions. Kevin remained at the window until the last of the ships disappeared into the cosmic darkness. Behind him, the station hummed with activity and purpose. The future was beginning. A future built not on conquest or conflict, but on understanding and compassion, and the radical belief that peace was possible somewhere among the stars. A queen sailed toward her home world, carrying memories of kindness and the knowledge that she had chosen rightly. And in a station orbiting a neutral world, a diplomat stood watching the darkness and felt the weight of connection that spanned the vast and infinite cosmos. The story of humanity had changed. They were no longer just explorers or traders, or peaceful newcomers trying to find their place in the galaxy. They were now people who brought peace where others saw only conflict. They were people who believed that understanding was more powerful than strength, and somewhere in the future, perhaps in months or years, a human would stand once more with a veteran queen, and they would remember these moments when everything changed, when one act of kindness set in motion events that would echo across galaxies and forever alter the fate of species. But for now, in this moment, Kevin simply watched the stars and knew that some connections, once made, could never truly be broken. They could be tested by distance and time and the demands of duty and responsibility, but they would endure because they were built on the most fundamental truth of both human and veteran nature. Asterisk.